All right, where do I begin? Our story begins at Paris's premier international airport, Charles de Gaulle. Okay. Now, normally I'm an experienced traveler, as some of you may know. I'm somewhat of an experienced traveler, and usually, as an experienced traveler, I like to get to the Charles de Gaulle airport early because I know, no disrespect to France, I love the country, but Charles de Gaulle airport is one of the worst in Europe. It's a major hub, but unfortunately, due to, I think, like a lack of interest from the managers of any of these companies, where they just refuse to hire additional people. And I feel like in France, you just have to always hire more people because everyone is doing work very slowly. Okay. It's just the pace that you have to adjust to. And therefore, you have to hire more people. There's always like work stoppages and stuff like that. And these guys, the unions are relatively powerful, but the corporate overlords will literally punish travelers instead of meeting the actual demands of labor unions there. So I've been in a situation where I've been like stuck in France and stuff. Like I had to do crazy maneuvering to get out. So I knew that. And because I knew that, I was like, I'll go 3 hours early. It's something that I never do. Usually I'm actually very slow. But this time I was like, I'll go 3 hours early and everything will be fine. I was already worried that I was going to have issues coming into the country. I had joked about it already. So I was like, at least on the one side, like leaving the country of France will not be that big of a problem. And boy, was I wrong. Okay. Boy, was I wrong. So I hit the triple Monty. I had like a generational run. There was massive traffic going in. When you actually drive into the airport, the person that's dropping you off has to get a gate ticket at the gate. The ticket actually didn't work. Like, so we were stuck in traffic with like other cars behind us. Like my driver had to get out and be like, and wave people away from the gate so that we could actually get to a gate that worked, all this stuff. Right. And I'm like, oh brother, here we go. Walk in. I'm flying business. So like I have sky priority. So I'm thinking like, oh, at least I'll be able to get my luggage in on time. Barely made it to the check-in. Okay. There was already issues with the check-in. Once I got through the check-in, I got hit at every single step. There's an automatic passport processor where you just kind of step into this room and then boop, doors open, you walk in, right? I wait in line. There's only one. None of the machines are working. Finally, I get to the machine that is working, and the machine stops working. It just won't take my passport. It won't take my passport. I was like, oh, here we go. So I had to go to an actual officer to allow me to, to let me through so I could get in. Then I got stuck behind classic old lady. Okay. Old lady with a lot of bags, with a lot of fluids. So then like she's taking her fluids out and then like doing all this stuff at the security gate. I'm stuck behind this person. I already took out all my electronics and stuff. But of course, lo and behold, boom, I get stopped at security after this old lady as well. The old lady with the bags of fluids, classic. She obviously was stopped. Okay. She had to get GSR swabbed, all this shit. And then of course, I also got stopped, had to get GSR swabbed, all of this shit because I have electronics on me. And, I stopped there. Generational 3-hour run at Charles de Gaulle. And then afterwards, I get into the flight and I'm like, all right, finally. The flight was actually fantastic. I slept the entire time. I slept like a goddamn baby, slept the entire time, didn't even eat on the flight, which is crazy. There's never been a moment where it was like an 8-hour to 9-hour flight and I didn't even eat. I slept the entire time on the flight. Finally get into the United States of America. And at which point I'm like, all right, let's do it. I got global entry. This is going to be my first ever global entry entrance. Hopefully this will go smoothly. Okay. Oops, hold on. My room service is here. My cold brew is here. 1 second. Where was I? So it's the worst cold brew of my life. Okay. It is what it is. So Global entry, first time ever. Okay, first time ever getting into global entry. I got it after my brother yelled at me over and over again, telling me you gotta get global entry, whatever, right? I get to the global entry line and they're processing everybody expeditiously. You walk up, boom. You walk up, immediately they take your photo of your face and you walk in and there's a customs person there, cop there, just basically waves you. Okay? And they do that over and over again. It gets to me. Take a photo. Boom. Walk in. Instantly, the Customs and Border Patrol agent goes, "Step aside, sir." I was like, here we go. All right. She goes, "Step aside, sir. An agent will come in and take you to another location." I was like, is that proper protocol? It's like, sometimes it happens. And I was like, okay. And I knew at that point, I was like, okay, I'm texting like family. I'm like, this is happening. I'm texting my manager. You know, I was basically I got Lolo on. I was like, listen, you know, I'm going in. All right. I'm freaking going in. It's who knows how long this will take? Who knows what will happen? And I had already heard like horror stories from people. There was like that one girl on TikTok that had talked about this. And I thought to myself, all right, it's done. It's happening to me as well. It is what it is. You know, M is real high. I'm about to say M is real high multiple times to get these guys off my back. So I'm waiting in the corner. This Latina ICE agent comes up, picks me up, takes me to this detention center. I sit down, fluorescent light bulbs, the whole nine. Okay. They have benches in the back of O'Hare Airport where there's like a detention area. Okay. There's a detention area. I'm sitting there. There's like a bunch of terrified families. Okay. There's an old lady in a wheelchair. There's like a mom and daughter behind me. There's some like random dude in front of me. And the way it works is there's a back door, right? And they take your passport, they go to the back door. You don't know what the hell's going on in there, but they sometimes come out and they just say someone's name with their passport in their hands and they go, "You're clear to leave." So they basically, when they bring you to the detention area, they, I guess, do some kind of surveillance on your background to figure out if you are, if you're going to get harassed even further or if this level of harassment is fine. Okay. And I asked and I looked around at all the passports that people had to see if there were other American citizens. And lo and behold, at least in the area that I was at, I was the only American citizen. There was another guy that actually had an American passport as well. But like, because I asked the terrified family behind me, I was like, "Hey guys, if you don't mind me asking, like, do you guys have an American passport?" They were like, "No." So it turns out it's just they're terrifying the shit out of mostly non-American citizens. Okay. But apparently they're also interested in trying to terrify American citizens as well. So they're just like coming in and out. They get this lady in a wheelchair out of there, which I thought was so insane. Old lady in a wheelchair is in the ICE detention area, and they come out with their passport and they're like, "Here, you can leave." Okay. So that's one thing, right? Like, I've had secondary searches and stuff done to me before. I've had I think it's called the quadruple S. Like, they put the SSSS on your boarding pass, and you always get checked randomly when you get hit with that. Like, that's happened to me a lot in the past. I get GSR swabbed all the time. That stuff is normal. I've experienced that quite a bit. Okay. But this time I didn't even have the quadruple S on my boarding pass. So I was like, all right, it's probably fine. So I wait. Finally, this agent comes out, says, "Hasan Piker." I'm like, "That's me. Coming with me." I'm like, "Oh, brother, here we go." They take me to this back room. Okay. And the back room is not great. Everything, the back room is designed in the most hostile way I've ever been inside of a room. The vibes are really back there. Everything is fluorescent light bulb, obviously, but they had these two seats that were firmly planted into the ground. Okay, they were complete metal. They were like tiny stools, very uncomfortable, with like braces on the side so you can handcuff someone to them. Okay, and there was also a seat for like a lawyer. So I sat down on the lawyer seat on the corner to establish dominance because I've watched too many JCS interrogation videos and I knew I had to have command over the room. So I didn't sit in the cuck chair. Instead, I sat in the lawyer chair and we got to talking. And let me tell you folks, the TikTokers that talked about being detained, they were right. It was an insane situation. So it's very obvious that they knew exactly who the fuck I was. It's very obvious that they knew how to like navigate the conversation, and it was a really, really interesting conversation that took place. It was very cordial. Okay, it was very cordial, which I noticed. I thought it was strange how cordial it was because I've had run-ins with like cops in the past. I've had run-ins with feds in the past. Well, I guess the FBI was very cordial as well when I had some talks with them in the past. But overall, I was not expecting CBP agents to be cordial. I will say that. Okay. Now, having said that, the entire process is supposed to be intimidating. So it's like suck my dick, cordial or whatever. Okay. I think they were being cordial because they wanted me to say something that was incriminating and say something that was enough to justify further detention from that point on. And let me tell you, they certainly did do that. So he knew exactly who the fuck I was, but he was basically like broaching the conversation in a way where it was like free flowing, where in the process of discovery, he was adding on additional talking points. He always made it seem as though he was asking certain things that after discovering in the process of that conversation, he would ask additional questions. So, you know, he's like, oh, what are you doing in Chicago? And I was very revealing. I was like, well, I was in France because I want to take my family out for Mother's Day to France, but I had to come back early from France, even though today is technically Mother's Day, because I have a speaking engagement at University of Chicago. And he was like, oh, what kind of speaking engagement? It's like, I don't know, some like journalism school stuff. And he's like, oh, well, since you mentioned that, he kept saying, oh, well, since you mentioned that, what do you do as a job? And I was like, I'm a Twitch streamer. And he's like, well, since you mentioned that you were a Twitch streamer, what kind of things do you stream about? And at first I was like, do I just tell him I play video games? Because I don't think this motherfucker going to believe me if I say I just play video games to him, right? So I was just like, yeah, I play video games, but I also do current events sometimes, drama, internet. And he's like, oh, do you talk about, since you mentioned that, you talk about the things that you talk about, do you talk about the news? And I was like, yeah, I talk about the news. And he kept saying, okay, so when you talk about the news, do you talk about the war? And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, do you talk about Trump? And that was the first time where I was like, what the f is this question? Like, I literally straight up told him, I was like, why are you asking me this? Like, I was like, what does this have to do with anything? And it was interesting because they, like, the dude asked so many insane questions, none of which is illegal, by the way. I just need you to understand, nothing I have done thus far is illegal, as in nothing I've done online is illegal as of now, if that makes sense. Now, laws may change in the future and they might actually start prosecuting speech, which I do fear is the goal of this administration. But so far, everything I've done is fully protected under the First Amendment. Okay? And none of these questions are actually valid questions to ask. But I was entertaining it because I didn't want to, I didn't want to present it as being difficult because I didn't want to extend the detention. And two, I actually wanted to see how far I could take it. Maybe it was up of me to do that. Maybe it was not appropriate for me to do that, to play fast and loose with a person that has complete control over my life in that very moment, but I wanted to see like what they were trying to get away, like what they were trying to take from this conversation. And so, you know, instead of just pleading the fifth as I'm supposed to do in situations like this, I just kept giving him answers. And there were definitely areas where I was very revealing about my position, knowing full well that they know exactly what they're looking for. I saw no reason to hold back on certain things. So I said, I don't like Trump. I was like, what are you going to do? It's protected by the First Amendment. I don't like Trump. Yes. Right? Like, I was like, I'm not fond of him. I don't like him. He said he was going to end the wars. He hasn't ended the wars. What the fuck is up with that? You know? And the guy actually was very sympathetic. The agent was very sympathetic. And I don't know if it was like a JCS style interrogation technique to come across as sympathetic to like invoke some kind of positive feelings out of me in an effort to like get me to reveal something maybe that'll trip me up, or because he just genuinely was sympathetic and he had the vibes of someone who was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, right? But he was like, listen, I'm Iraqi, so I know. And let me tell you, I do think that him being Iraqi played a big role in this, because if he wasn't, there was a lot of editor-ass white boys that are at Customs and Border Patrol at O'Hare Airport. I saw them walk by. There was a dude who looked like he was like 25 max, but he was balding. And I knew immediately, if that my agent, I'm screwed. I'm going to CCOT. This dude is going to literally hook me. So I got a little lucky. All right. I will admit. So basically, I think the reason why they sent the Iraqi CBP agent is because they bracket you into different categories. For me, they wanted to conduct an investigation about my involvement with Hamas and my involvement with the Houthis and they suspected my involvement with Hezbollah. Straight up. That's literally what this conversation was about. And it's not even a joke. Like they straight up tried to get something out of me that I think they could use to basically detain me permanently, which is insane, because there is no direct connection or direct involvement. So I'll say this much. So we're talking. You know, I'm telling him like, oh, I'm Chicago. I'm going to be speaking there for the journalism school. I told him like, you know, I don't like Donald Trump. And I was like, so why are you guys doing this? And he's like, oh, it's just like routine. It's a routine process. I was like, it doesn't feel too routine. And basically my big fear from the entire situation was like, if they were to ask for my phone, not that there's anything incriminating on my phone, but I don't want the federal government inside of my phone beyond all of the times where they probably have been engaging in like warrantless surveillance on my phone or whatever the fuck. I don't like, it's not your business. You know what I mean? It's none of your fucking business. So it's a goddamn free country. Like there's privacy laws for this kind of shit, right? So for those of you who don't know, by the way, they can't actually unlock your phone, but if you have biometrics on your phone, they could technically use that and put the phone to your face and unlock it that way. Hold on, let me fix this. Let me fix the banner. So just so you know, they could technically do that, okay? They could technically do that, but there's a trick. Either you get a burner phone when you're traveling internationally, or if you have your regular phone, you can just do a passcode by either canceling biometrics, or if you forgot to do so, if you forgot to cancel biometrics like your Face ID, what you can do is click it 5 times. If you hold 5 times in a row, it will actually disable Face ID, and it will force you to put your passcode in. And because there are laws against like the agents not being able to force you to put your passcode in, they can't actually access your phone like that. Now, there's different methods of how they can access your phone. From what I understand, they can also put it on a computer and just like plug it into a machine, and the machine just basically takes all of the information in your phone. So it is what it is. I don't know if you can actually do that if your phone is on, but I was thinking about all these things. I had already unlocked the biometrics, like I disallowed biometrics, and It's a Faraday cage once you get into the detention center anyway, so you can't actually send any text messages once you're in there. It's there's no access to the internet. But I'm sitting there and they're asking me about Trump. They're asking me about like Hamas, and he kept saying stuff. He kept saying stuff like, "Do you like Hamas? Like, do you support Hamas? Do you think Hamas is a resistance group? Do you think Hamas is a terrorist group or a resistance group?" Like, he just kept asking over and over again, right? And I kept repeating the same statement over and over again. I kept saying, I kept saying a couple different things. One, in terms of like Israel and all the wars, I was like, I'm on the side of civilians. I want the endless bloodshed to end. I am a pacifist. I want wars to end. I just kept repeating that over and over again. Every single time he asked me a question, I just kept repeating that. And every single time he asked me a question, a leading question about Hamas, I kept saying, the United States State Department recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization. The United States State Department recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization. So, like, he just kept asking me over and over again, like Hamas, Houthis, all this trying to be like, oh, do you support them? Do you like them? Like, what do you think about them? Which I thought was insane, because the reality of the matter is, okay, up until this very moment, if you were to say, as an American citizen, you stand 10 toes down with Hamas, or you stand 10 toes down with the Houthis, or whatever they can't deny you entry into the country for that shit. But I don't know what the they're trying to do. So I was like, I'm not going to go beyond it. I'm not going to go beyond just like reiterating over and over again. The American government's position is that Hamas is a terrorist organization. But then he just kept asking me about the Houthis. And at that point, I was like, listen, he's like, well, do you agree with the terrorist designation for the Houthis? And I said, I'm of the Brookings Institute mindset that in 2020, when Donald Trump initially designated the Houthis as a terror organization, that was a major mistake. I talk about these issues from an academic context with humanitarian rights organizations and with academics and with journalists. As a matter of fact, this is perfectly this is, completely protected under First Amendment laws. And therefore, I don't understand what the reason why we're having this conversation is. And I kept saying that over and over again, at which point he just like kind of gave up. But what I thought was really interesting was, and I even followed it up with like, I call balls and strikes, and there are things that Trump has done that I actually agree with, and I'm not shy about saying those things, even though initially he said he was going to end all these wars. He hasn't done so. I think these wars are unnecessary. They're costly, and a lot of civilians die in the process. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's very inappropriate. And it must end, right? Like that's my position. But I do think that Trump did a good thing where he implemented a ceasefire with the Houthis. So when he does stuff like that, when I agree with him, I tell him what's what. Like I say it. When I agree with Trump in a decision, I'm open about it, right? So I explained that to him, and I just yapped away over and over and over again. And what I found to be particularly interesting was in the first half of the conversation, it was just like basically a fact-finding mission, right? Try to get me to say something that I think would be of interest. In the second part of the conversation, there were some real actionable items that he presented that depending on how I answer those questions, like I'm going to jail. Because the first stuff was just illegal for him to ask me those questions and completely idiotic and ridiculous. And I think they did it because they know who the fuck I am, and they wanted to put the fear of God into me, not knowing that I'm a stubborn piece of shit and that's not going to work at all, right? The second half of the conversation was actually like, because he left, went away for like 35 minutes, came back, and then he asked like actionable items. But one thing that I will take note of that I thought was very interesting was the fact that a lot of the shit that like the Ethan Kleins of the world have like cried about over and over again were unironically brought up in that conversation. And I was shocked. Okay, not like the bleach sword, obviously, but like the Houthi. like, did you interview a Houthi? It says here that you interviewed a Houthi. And I was like, or was he actually a Houthi? And I was like, he's not. You can look to all of the reporting that came up afterwards and before I interviewed him that he is not he's not a Houthi, that he is a regular Yemeni citizen. And I said, like, his name is Rashid al-Haddad. He is not even a Shia. And the dude, luckily, again, Iraqi, went, oh, yeah, that's right. That's a Sunni last name. Al-Haddad is a Sunni last name. So he must not have been a Houthi. And the very fact that that was like a point of contention that could have gotten me arrested is insane. And I genuinely, in that moment, was thinking, like, these dumbass slop tubers are actually playing with fire. And I even thought about not even mentioning this because I was like, I don't want to give him any sort of like power over the situation. But like, the reality of the matter is 100% the Trump administration is inadvertently working with a lot of these dipshits. These dipshits are playing a formative role in getting people in trouble with the law. Okay? That is literally the case. It was shocking that that was the case, but it is the case. And it's actually very frustrating that it is the case, that this administration doesn't care. That's why they work with Beitar. That's why they work with all these other insane groups. The Barry Weisses of the world actually have motion in this goddamn admin. Okay? So, they're cheering this on over at eSub. Yeah, I know. They can suck my dick. Liberals, by the way, cheering on one of the largest progressive voices in the country getting detained by the Trump Gestapo. Like, what a wonderful progressive audience they have over there. Anyway, they're straight up fascist at this point. So my point is, it's crazy that like these were actual questions. Like, they asked me about my Twitch bans, okay? And I talked about blowback. I talked about how, I said America deserved 9/11 and it was misconstrued. I do have sometimes, I use hyperbolic language and it gets taken out of context or whatever. And he agreed with the blowback sentiment in terms of like the 9/11 stuff. You're dumb. Yeah, no, I told him that. I was like, yeah, they asked me about my Twitch bans, chat. It's not even a joke. They asked me about Twitch chat, like Twitch bans, not Twitch chat, but Twitch bans. The other Twitch ban he asked me about was the last one that I got banned. And I explained to him like, this is, man, you really talk way too much. Lawyer would be pretty upset at you. Dude, what are you talking about? I know that under normal circumstances, I'm supposed to say, I want a lawyer. I don't want to talk to you. But nothing I'm doing is illegal. And I also wanted to see what would happen. Do you understand? I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to actually see this experience, which is why instead of immediately lawyering up, I was like, no, I'm gonna entertain this. I'm gonna see what they actually are trying to get out of this. And I'm glad I did this because the reality of the matter is, one, I'm profoundly privileged. Okay, remember, I'm a public person, and also I have enough money to be able to fight back against this sort of thing. And they know who the I am. So obviously, the reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the up. And for me, I'm going to use the privilege that I have in that moment to try and see what the they're doing. Okay? Because every single thing that they ask me, trying to get me to say something like, oh, I support Hamas or whatever, is literally not allowed. Like, they are not. What the do you mean? Like, why is this denying me entry into the country of my birth? Like, this is my birthright. I'm an American citizen. You can't just stop me at the border and be like, what's your opinion on Donald Trump? You're not allowed to enter the nation. Like, that's bullshit. So, that was the first half. Like I said, they asked about the Twitch bans. They asked about like the Rick Scott statement, and I was like, listen, I don't. I laughed. I was like, I'm not calling for the assassination of a sitting senator. That'd be insane. But instead, I explained to him, like, I was talking about the hypocrisy of the Republicans, blah blah blah. I explained away all that shit, and he was understanding. Then he went back and he came back, and the actionable items that came up afterwards was basically asking me about if I had ever been in contact with Hamas, if I had ever been in contact with the Houthis, directly or indirectly, if I had ever actually been in contact with Hezbollah, if I had actually ever offered financial support or logistics or any kind of support to Hamas, Hezbollah, or Houthis. They straight up asked me that. I laughed. I said, no, of course not. But yeah, that was, once again, these are questions that they're asking. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was in the actionable side of things, they also asked, have you ever interviewed a member of Hamas? Have you ever had a communication or correspondence with a member of Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis? Now, what's really insane about that is that as someone who works in media, sometimes I do actually do journalism, right? As I've maintained this position over and over again. And I said that I would, if given the opportunity, talk to someone that is a part of the Ansar Allah movement, a Houthi, or even Hamas, or even Hezbollah, right? I think that I have the right to do so. And what was interesting, you don't do journalism, you grift. I know, Chatter. That's why the federal government is trying to arrest me. Yes, because I'm grifting too hard. That's what it is. Thank you. Yes, your dumbass slop tuber is correct. I'm grifting. So what's interesting, asking that is a violation of prior restraint. So that part, like those are the questions that are like actionable, right? Like those are the ones that if you say, how do you even classify a member of Hamas? It's not like even Hamas issues passports. Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? But that is the part where they were like, if you answer yes to any of that, that's when, you know, there's like actually illegal stuff in there. Having said that, there is one part of it that wasn't illegal, which is being in communications or being in contact with someone at Hamas. Like that is a part of journalism you actually can do. It's ridiculous. Like you can interview ISIS. Like what are we talking about? The notion that this would be an issue for the Customs and Border Patrol is ridiculous. Okay. I mean, Donald Trump is in contact with Hamas. He had a envoy directly talk to Hamas a couple months prior. He's in direct contact with the Houthis. Like, what are you talking about? And so is Dropsite. Like, the idea that this will deny you entry into the country is bullshit. Like, what are we talking about? What do you mean? Like, what kind of insane double standard is there, right? And so that part was frustrating. And the interview interrogation, whatever you want to call it, that basically ended with me asking, like, so what is the purpose of this? Like, am I being detained? And because I was like, you know that I'm going to talk about this. I was like, a lot of people have talked about this like detainment structure. And he was like, yeah, people really exaggerate. The people really exaggerate how these things go. And I was like, well, it is not a great situation to be in, you know? Like, what do you mean? Yeah, he was like, yeah, there's been a lot of reporting on, the conditions and situations like this in detainment, but you're not technically detained. I was like, so I can leave? Like, I asked him, am I detained? And he's like, no. I was like, all right, so what's the purpose of this entire situation? I can just walk out right now. And basically when I said that, the interview ended. So I don't know if that was something that I should have said from the start. Am I being detained? What's the deal here? But basically, yeah, it was a illegal pretense. Like, well, that's your Fourth Amendment right? No, you don't have. Okay, chatters, I need you to understand something. So after I said, am I being detained or whatever, he was like, no, well, he didn't like abruptly end it. He kept asking some questions, but it pretty much ended after that. And I don't know if that was like, I don't know if that's like I got lucky there, because when I asked like, am I free to go, that kind of stopped the process a little bit. And I don't know if that's the reason why I didn't have them look through my phone. But I wasn't planning on letting them look through my phone anyway. That was my point. Like, there was a line where I was going to say, I'm done. I'm done with this. Either arrest me or, you know, let me go. I don't know what's happening here. And I got detained. I didn't get detained. Yes, chatter. Yes. ICE agents took me to a detention center that is a de facto detention. Like, what are you talking about? The total runtime of it was like 2 hours, which was definitely faster than I thought it was going to be, I will admit. And I probably should have asked, am I being detained from the start? And I wonder what would have happened. But I basically asked him, like, do you think this is going to happen again? Right? I was like, is this going to happen again? Hold on. I asked, like, you know, am I going to be detained in the future? And he said, maybe. And he gave me this piece of paper, this sheet from Homeland Security. What is DHS trip? Okay. And you can, I guess, submit an inquiry at dhs.gov/trip and ask why I was stopped. You will be prompted to describe your particular concerns and experience, provide contact information to which a response will be directed, and be assigned a case number to help you monitor the progress of your inquiry, which I will do. Okay, I will do this. And he basically said, you know, you can figure out what not to do so that this doesn't happen again. And I suspect the what not to do is just don't be a political commentator that speaks about American foreign policy, which is not something I'm planning on stopping. Now, why did I tell you guys about this experience? Okay. Why did I tell you about this entire experience? Like, because in my mind, I thought maybe I shouldn't reveal this stuff, because I think, like, the goal here is to put fear into people's hearts, to have a chilling effect on speech, that, like, the government is unafraid of intimidating you in illegal ways. Okay. The government is now officially willing and able to intimidate you for speech, for your speech. That is a direct violation of the First Amendment. I'm no First Amendment auditor. I'm no big city libertarian. I'm no Mr. Admiral Maritime Law. But the reality of the matter is that as of this administration, they are totally willing and able to actually come after you for your speech. And even with, like, ridiculous shit. Like, they're willing and able to go along with, like, stuff that gets written in the free press, or willing and able to go along with that even editors bring up. Okay, that's how stupid and silly this situation has gotten. Now, of course, does this stop me from saying whatever the fuck I want to say? Of course not. Don't be ridiculous. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it was to give you more insight into what the government is doing, and to speak out against this sort of stuff, because I do have a position of privilege here, and I want to make sure that, like, if they can do this to me, like, they probably are willing and able to do this to others as well. But you should know your rights, that you should not be fearful, and you should not worry, especially if you're an American citizen, that these guys are going to come after you and, like, arrest you or some shit. Okay? Was your interview recorded? I don't know. But it is pretty wild, I will say. As someone who's been held up in airports many times over, it was actually shocking. It was actually shocking that these guys totally grabbed me, knowing exactly who I am, knowing that I will most likely talk about this, with the hopes that I think that they would at least stoke some fear and threaten people like myself, and then also threaten others as a byproduct of this. I mean, it backfired in my situation, but I hope this doesn't discourage others from speaking out as well. They don't have the right to do this, okay? They do not have a right to do this.